Okay, it's a little bit about grinding and bench grinders. You can see we have 4 bench grinders here in the machine shop. We have some others in our welding lab. They use them pretty much the same. Going to go over the grinder, but first, why do you grind something? Well, one of the most common reasons to grind things, or has been over the years, is to make cutting tools. If you remember when Marshall Barr was giving his explanation of cutting angles for the lathe on that video, he also talked about grinding the different shapes. And you can see from this one, hopefully you can see it, it has very unique shape to it. One part would be in the tool rest to do a particular type of cut. Another would do a different type of cut. You have your standard type of cut. And when you get a piece of high-speed steel, you just get a rectangle, just a piece like that, and then you grind a little something on the end to make your tip that you want. And he had mentioned that he likes to put it in his holder so that he can manipulate it better than trying to do it like this. And you'll see what that means in a minute. Let's look at the grinder. Now, I have not been talking about safety much with these little videos, but this one I have to talk about safety. You have here your wheel, and you have a tool rest, and it's very important that that tool rest be as close as possible to the grinder. In fact, it's required by OSHA to be no greater than 1/8 of an inch. And we have some pieces of material that's 1/8 inch thick, what we use in some welding exercises. I've cut a couple of pieces out here with some, maybe you'll hang them up, so you can always grab it. And if that piece of material will go between the wheel and the tool rest, you need to see an instructor and have him adjust the tool rest to the proper location. The worst accident I've had happen in my 20+ years of teaching shop was a student that got his finger caught on a grinder, and it was caught because the piece he was working on got caught between the tool rest and the grinding wheel, and his finger got behind it. Very bloody, not life-threatening. He lost his fingernail. Nevertheless, the grinders, they can be dangerous. And when you first start, always put your material on the tool rest. After you've gotten much more familiar, as in a year or 2 of experience doing this, you can start using doing some freehand stuff. But don't do it at first until you get a feel for how a grinder works. You may not be able to notice until you're here in person, but there are different grinding wheels, you may have different stuff. That's in one of the videos, or one of the PowerPoints. One of the most common thing to do with the grinding wheel is to cut off the burrs that can happen, the wire edges. You can see this piece of metal has a place where there's just some metal left on it. It didn't get cut completely off, so you've got this real sharp edge up here. We need to get that off. And when you have pieces with those kind of sharp edges, you don't want to hold them with your hands. You want to use gloves. Now, I'm also going to put my face shield down so I won't be able to speak. And you need to wear these. There are some behind here because this can be kind of messy. Let me do a little grinding and you'll see. You can see this part now has been ground and there are no rough edges. One of the things about this though is that this gets very hot. So you might want to, one reason for wearing gloves, you usually keep some water out here. You fill up a little basin there that you can fill up with water, and you can dip your piece in to cool it off. It's sort of a trade-off though, because then the water boils on the outside of the material and gets just as hot. One last thing, you've seen the grinding part. You saw how I rested it on the material at all time, either this way or this way. I'm mentioning now, you only do steel on our grinders, or cobalt or whatever, but do not do aluminum on the grinders. What happens when you do try to grind aluminum is it breaks off and it gets inside the little spaces that are part of a grinding wheel, and we have to clean them, and it's only marginally possible to clean them. What can happen with that aluminum is that it gets in there and it gets hot and it expands and it'll explode the wheel. So steel only, no aluminum or brass or copper or anything but steel. We're going to do sanding, which is what you can use for the other wheel. But if you're going to clean them, you're going to use a tool kind of like this. Well, yeah, we've got several of these around, but again, it's going to be something an instructor will do, or an assistant, but just thought you might want to see it. It's called dressing the wheel, and there's some little pieces in here that help make this stay even. You want to stay, when you're using a grinding wheel, you want to use the whole wheel and not just the center part, but a lot of people will end up using the center part. You've got to even it out because it ends up getting, having an uneven surface on the front. And that device is what can help make it even. You do not use the edge of the wheel, only the face, unless it's a specialty wheel. We have a few of those, but I'm not going to go into those. These are our grinders.